to another Fight Chat Friday from TKD Coach Academy. We are Adrian Byrne and Richie Forde, and Taekwondo Coach Academy is our effort to share the very, very best of ITF competition, performance and coaching, and to generate a conversation around those for everyone who's interested. And if that sounds like you, make sure you like this video, subscribe, and if you'd like to get a notification every week when we go live, make sure you hit the bell button and you'll get that notification straight to your inbox. So this week is a little bit different. I don't have Richie with me, so our schedules just didn't work out this week. So I'm going to be taking this one solo. We're going to look at a fight from the 2015 ITF World Championships in Plovdiv, Bulgaria. And this is unusual. It's a little bit different for us because, first of all, it's from the other ITF with their headquarters in Vienna. And I don't really watch as much action from that ITF as I would have done years ago, because over the years the rules have diversified and changed a little bit between the ITF groups, and they're just not as similar as they used to be. So that's going to be a very, very interesting watch for me. The second thing that's unusual is that I've only very, very briefly watched about half of this video. So it's very much going to be more reactive, and I'm really hoping that there's enough in the video to generate some discussion around the points that I think there's going to be a lot of points of comparison, points of difference. So really looking forward to seeing what it has to offer. I'd like to say a big thank you to Ashley Stewart, who's the owner of this video, and it's giving us a good chance to look in on what the other side are doing and see if there's something that we can learn from that. So without any further ado, let's jump into a quick intro of what I think I'm going to get from this particular video. So the first thing is, it's the comparison. It's ITF versus ITF. It's how the rules have changed over the years, and we want to look at the impact of how that's impacted the strategy and tactics that people are going to choose. In particular, looking at what shots people select and how effective those shots are within the rule set. And then from that, what can we learn and apply in our own training, in our own sparring, in our own competition, and maybe even a little bit, what can we learn about how rules changes have affected the game and whether or not we might want to look at some of those rule changes ourselves. So the first thing I'm noticing is it's kind of unusual that there's a clinch that's happened like that. It resulted in both people going to the ground and there was no foul for holding. So that's an immediate change. So I don't think the foul for holding exists in that ITF. So we've seen twice now where North Korea has been able to go straight through to hands, and Ukraine is taking more of a half-facing kind of stance and not really presenting the side kick as a threat. And I think that's quite different from what we'd expect to see in our ITF at the moment with a lot of competitors. So it does look like there's a different opening there, at least between these competitors. Very nice shot, you got to appreciate that. Lovely band-aid into the Nerio, and I suppose the point that's unusual for me looking at this is they're maintaining a long distance most of the time. They're maintaining half-facing stances, and a direct headshot with from that distance is just something I wouldn't expect to see as often. What I really am curious about as well as this match goes on is to see if the requirement for the 180 spin becomes a thing. So there's already been one from one of the competitors from the Ukrainian. So I don't know, does that put pressure now on North Korea to make sure they get that score to avoid the 2-point penalty? So this is interesting because, again, I was kind of expecting with the few punches that were thrown there that a warning would be issued. So maybe the warning there is not for holding as we might have expected, but is actually for the throwing the additional punches beyond the first two. I can imagine that would have a huge effect on the kind of shots that you go for and whether or not a blitz is a viable option. So let's have a look. Okay, so that's twice now that Ukraine has looked at a sidestep or a little bit of evasive movement in his attack, and he's coming from distance with that. That's something you used to see a lot more in our ITF some years ago, but it would usually be working around a side kick, so you're stepping into the threat zone, trying to draw the side kick so you can make an angle, hit the turning kick and go to hands. I think in this case though, it's actually trying to draw the spin or the jumping rear leg kick, so that, you know, maybe that's something that's evolved as a strategy over time, going from that longer distance, you know, leaving it so that as you step in, you're into the threat range, but not for the lead leg that we'd be expecting, but maybe for a jumping back kick, jumping reverse, that compulsory 180 jumping technique. Let's see. We've seen several times now that North Korea has been able to go directly to hands. It's not a blitz, it's very much a step forward to hands. And Ukraine hasn't offered a straight line side kick or, you know, just fenced with the front leg to keep the distance there. It hasn't really reacted by going to hands directly either. So I think that's not a judgment in terms of the quality of the competitor. That's a reaction to how the rule set is different, the expectations are different, and the chunking is different. So what do I mean by chunking? The linking together of what you're seeing, the movements that you're seeing, and what you're expecting is a little bit different. So I think North Korea is being very effective here, stepping through directly to hands, and I don't think it's what Ukraine is expecting to see here. What's very interesting for me as well is when it does come to going to hands, it's that potentially it's the double jab, it's the right hand again, or it's a single backhand. The hands aren't connecting, you know, with the second, third, fourth punch as often, and obviously we know that they can't go to the third punch without conceding a warning. But I would have thought we'd see more 1 to 2 punches connecting into the an exit kick, or, you know, maybe a finishing kick. But it does occur to me that a standing head kick is only 2 points, whereas a jumping punch is 2 points as well. And maybe the relative value of the scores changes what competitors are looking for. Now, we do get that within our ITF as well, where you'll have a clinch and neither person's at fault, and it's just going to be break and continue. But I think you'd start to see our competitors now making it very clear, hands wide, they're not holding. And I think we've now seen it a couple of times in this match where that's not being penalised. So the addition of a foul in our ITF for holding does have an impact on that, where the foul being left out, it's maybe an option that you can go to where, okay, at worst you might concede a warning, but the third punch would be a warning anyway, so it's just avoiding conceding a score. So a really interesting match for me. The first few things that jump out, and it's in terms of how the athletes present. So I've gotten used to seeing much more side facing from the competitors in our ITF at the moment, and I think that side facing is a little bit of a reaction to what scores are effective and what scores are getting in return. And the fact that both competitors are that bit more half facing in this match does suggest to me that they're preparing for different scores, and they're expecting different scores to be effective. So one reason you'd be side facing is, well, a side kick is 2 points. A kick to the body is 2 points within our ITF, and they're only receiving 1 point for that body kick. So I think straight away that changes the value of it. I think they want to be positioned in a way where they can take a jumping punch for 2 points, or they can add a jumping back kick, or a 360 turning kick, maybe a jumping reverse turning kick, something like that, where they're potentially looking at 3, 4, and even 5 points potentially off their scores. So for those who are a little bit less familiar with it, under the new rules in the ITF Vienna system, a 360 kick to the head can net you 5 points, or a 360 kick to the body can net you 4. So those are big scores. Whereas the 180 kicks jumping to the head, you're going to be getting big scores as well. So and they're required to throw a 180 kick while jumping each round as well, or face a 2-point deduction. So I think that combination means you have to pay particular attention to giving yourself a facing, giving yourself a distance that's going to allow you to attempt those shots. And then we have a little bit of interplay where we can go back and have a look at the video once again, and we can see the distances that the shots are thrown from. And I think, at various stages, the athletes are looking to preserve a little bit of distance so they can actually attempt that shot. And then the shifting in and out of distance, and as we saw from Ukraine, the attempted side steps, looking to draw maybe that jump spinning kick so that they can then attack with hands or attack with turning kick on the land. So just jumping back in. It's this we're looking at, that if at this point in time Ukraine has been credited with the attempt at the jump back kick, now it should be on North Korea to make sure that within this 2 minutes, it's a team sparring match, that he's going to have an attempt at a 180, and the dynamic that creates, that little pressure, the first person to land it kind of puts pressure on the second person, and then you can have this little bit of play where you're teasing in and out of the distance, inviting them to throw the shot and take the risk, and potentially capitalizing on the miss. So one of the things that will change for us as well is that if you have that bigger ring and there's less opportunity to create pressure on the opponent to travel, then your shot selection is geared around less momentum building and more direct scores. So we have the axe kick against the reverse turning kick here. So we have more attempts at direct counters because perhaps you can't create momentum in the same way. The person can always pull off to the left or right. There's a bit more room in the ring. So where we might see a blitz as, kind of a 2-4 shot, so you might get the score off the lead hand, and then you're also creating pressure on the distance, so you're pushing your partner to concede space and move back. You're putting them towards the edge of the ring, and then you can build scores from there. I think we're seeing much more individual exchanges that connect and then break and don't have the same continuity here. So we'll have another look. This is where Ukraine is looking to work around a shot that isn't there necessarily. Like, I'd expect to see that against a side kick. I can totally understand why you'd be doing that to draw a spin. The back kick has been effective for both fighters, so maybe that's something that he's looking to draw there and get himself into hands. So again, that's something a little bit different. So looking at those and seeing, well, what does that tell us, or what does that teach us for our ITF? The first thing that's jumping to my mind is the size of the ring. What would change if we had a bigger ring? And it might mean that we have more point stop style interactions, where there's enough space that you're either scoring with the first attempt, or with the combination that you throw, or the other person has movement enough to get away. And I think you'd have less pressure on warnings, but maybe less overall interaction. The second thing then is our foul for holding. So we can see when things do get close here, the athletes are able to push together and stop the match. So I think for continuity, our foul for holding is a big deal. So we've kind of two dimensions there. The bigger ring allows for more continuity. The foul for holding allows for more continuity. It's two different ways of looking at the same thing. After that, we have the two punches, and then you have to add something else. And I'd almost lump that in with the requirement to throw the jump spin kick, the 180, each round. And when you put the two of those together, it is really artificially creating a situation where the fighters have to go to other shots that they might not choose for efficiency alone. And there's a little bit of a mini game that plays then in terms of drawing out those shots. So if you're going to have to take a jumping spin shot at some point, then creating that, or forcing the person to do that under pressure, maybe running the clock down on them because it doesn't count if they throw it without being engaged, it should allow an opportunity. And then you have to look at what shots lead into throwing that shot effectively. Whereas on our side of it, there's no obligation to throw any particular shot. And what that means is you go to the most efficient. And the most efficient is obviously, it's simpler. It's direct. It's fast. It's low to the ground. It's in tight lines. And the more efficient you make the shot, in some ways, the less spectacular it is. So we see these guys trying to throw reverse turning kicks, downward kicks, 360s, or jump back kicks. And I think you'll see the shots thrown differently to make it clear that you're off the ground, versus what we might do with a very, very low to the ground back kick. Maybe it's not off the ground. For us, it doesn't matter. Kick to the body is 2 points. For them, the kick to the body might be 3 points. So if they're jumping and if they cover enough rotation. So it does change things completely. Beyond that, I'm really interested in contact. It's so rare now that we watch a final in our ITF where there isn't a foul for contact, and there isn't a hint of a foul for contact here. So for me, it's an interesting one, because I don't think the contact is actually to do with how hard the person gets hit. I think it's actually to do with continuity. And I think when we have interactions where multiple punches are allowed, and you can punch until you find the space for the kick, I think you end up with more time in hands against hands contact, and it looks rougher, for lack of a better term. And I think that invites the referees to stop the match, give a foul, and break continuity. Whereas I think in this case, what you've got is, because there's only going to be 2 punches, it's only a very strong direct counter, maybe, or something like that, that might invite that foul for contact. So I think the evolution of the rules, even with very subtle changes, has meant that you're less likely to see a foul for contact on one side of the fence than on the other. But so the final kind of analysis then is, well, what can we learn from this, both in terms of the techniques that we use and how we might apply them, and in terms of where we might go with our rule changes. So I think from the rule changes point of view first, I quite like that the match can be continuous without too many interjections from the referee, in terms of what I saw there. And I think that's around the rule set encouraging less time in contact with hands, which I think is what's drawing our fouls. On the other hand, I don't mind time in contact with hands. It's not a problem for me. And I think it's a skill set that you can develop, and then and then it's equal for everybody. It's not such a big thing. I know that this is 2015; it hadn't happened yet, but in that ITF they've moved towards 10-ounce gloves, and I think that could be an innovation that we could do, which would allow us to have less worry about the contact in hands. It's something to look at. I think in terms of technique, what I see from that is, if we were to put, without any prior preparation, a fighter from our ITF against a fighter from their ITF, I think both fighters would catch each other on the hop completely, with unexpected techniques, distances, and strategies. And so I think what's very interesting is you'll have high level competitors on both sides who train just as hard, but will be expecting different shots and different shot selection. So for me, I think one of the lessons that we can take from it is every shot will have its day in the sun, will be effective at some point. It's well worth training the wide range and variety of shots and not just those that are most efficient all of the time. And the reason is that the tactics and strategies will change, and that we can't really predict what the rule changes in the future will look like. So a very few short years down the line, we could be, picking different shots as our go-to, simply because the rules have pushed us that way. If the ring reduced to 7 meters in size, if the fouls for contact went away or were diminished, if there were less warnings for traveling, or if traveling started to build up minus points, avoiding sparring was building up minus points, these kind of things, it would really change the dimensions of our sparring and what it looks like. So I think the take-home message for me would be to continue to train variety in terms of shots, and look for ways to build in shots and strategies that we don't currently use. If you're always reacting to what you're seeing at the top level, you're always one step behind what's going to be the top level next. So the key is going to be that innovation. Find something that breaks the current meta game. So what's currently effective, find something that breaks that, and then that's maybe what's effective next. So again, if you have been enjoying this video series, take the time to pause this video, hit the like, subscribe button, and definitely hit that bell notification so you see what we're doing. Drop us a comment below in the YouTube comments, hit us on Instagram or Facebook. We're responsive wherever you find us. And if you have ideas for a video, something that we should tackle, a match that we should review, a technique or a strategy that you think needs a little looking into, or just someone who you think is a fantastic performer who isn't getting enough attention, please let us know through any of our social media channels, and we might tackle that one next week. See you next time.